Oh, hello. Okay, so I just turned in my last final to my first semester in grad school, and so I think it's a good time to do a holistic update for the entire semester. So let's get to that. All right, so I actually tried recording this yesterday, but I was not feeling it because half the time I was kind of just like zoning out. Because finishing your first semester in grad school, I guess, feels like that. It's just like, what do you do? So I was just kind of like, I don't like how that video went. So I'm re-recording it today and hopefully be more organized this time. So for the first time in like a while, I'm gonna have like timestamps in the descriptions and in the time thingy. So you can like click through which topic you want to hear about grad school, because I will be covering pretty much everything that I could think of in grad school that came up this semester. So yeah. To me, being a grad student doesn't really change much from when I was an undergrad. I'm still taking all these classes. I'm still kind of being challenged to learn and learn and learn. So to me, like, there's not really much of a difference. The difficulty is like a bit more than what I was used to, but it's still something that's more manageable. Once you learn a few things, and one of the biggest things that I learned as a student in grad school is learning when to give up. In undergrad, I used to not like giving up. I used to spend hours upon hours on homework because I wanted to have a complete, like, cohesive, like, homework or project or submission, whatever. And I used to not give up. I used to just say, like, just one more hour and I'll, like, finish this. But usually ends up being like 6 hours. But in grad school, you don't really have that leniency because most of the time you're kind of spreading yourself thin, so it's hard to do a just one more hour of working on homework. So for me, I learned when to give up on homework, especially when it's just like one tiny part in a problem that's gonna cost me like 1 point. So to me, it's just like you have to learn how to bargain when you want to spend your time and your sanity. And I started learning when to do that. The most recent homework, the most, not recent, but the last homework that I turned in for analysis, I actually didn't complete the last problem because I was like, I don't know how to do this, and I'll just save it for later. I'll look at the answer key and learn it that way. But it was just one of those moments where it's just like I can't spend like another 2 hours on this because I have other things to do. Uh, and that's like a really big lesson for me to learn because I never gave up before because I thought it was like, shameful because like, oh, you're giving up on like a homework. Ooh. But like I think it's a sort of key skill to have in grad school because you are going to have to make that choice. And another thing that I learned is to set a time when you're gonna stop working. For me, I set 9 p.m. on weekdays to when I stop working. Cause I've just had school and then I'm over here working on homework. I would like to have at least like some time in the evening where I am not thinking about math, or at least not writing about math. I can still be thinking about the problems in my head, like they're like running through my mind. But I think having a sort of stopping point where you're just like, okay, this is when I stop writing stuff. Maybe I'll think about the problems as I like do some stuff, but it's relaxation time. I think having that like distance between when you're gonna sleep or pass out and the work that you did, I think having a gap between those two things is key because you need to cool down because you don't want to go to sleep right when you just finished a problem because that's kind of it'll like still bother you in your head. So to me, I think learning those two things were key things that I found out as a student in grad school that I did not learn when I was in undergrad. As for the classes that I did take this semester, I took analysis, I took differential equations, and I took discrete math. All of them went fine. I think I was kind of shaken up because of how difficult analysis was for me. Analysis ended up being my hardest class um, because I think it's just kind of hard to get used to thinking about analysis again when I haven't taken it in over a year. So to me, that was kind of the hardest class. All the finals went well though. I don't have my grades yet because I literally just finished it yesterday. So I'm going to be waiting on that. But honestly, I don't really care about grades as long as I get enough to not have to retake it. I'm perfectly fine with whatever that lowest grade is. It's pretty wild being a student in grad school and being a first generation student, though. I did want to include that in here. There's a lot of things like logistically that I did not know that I was supposed to do. And getting emails from administration that you haven't done something is kind of just like, oh, let me get to that like really, really fast. So that's it for this section of the video because I believe that's all the things that I wanted to talk about as a student in grad school. So besides being a student in grad school, you are also sometimes a teaching assistant or maybe a research assistant, but that's not me. I'm a teaching assistant, and that's how I pretty much pay for this program. And teaching for me has not been like something new. Like, this is what I want to do in life. I want to be a teacher, I want to be a professor. So to me, it was like a sort of like natural progression into this job, into this task. So to me, it's just like this is sort of like what I did in undergrad my senior year when I was being a peer facilitator. I was helping students, and then when we transitioned to Zoom, I was helping students through Zoom. So for me, there wasn't much of a drastic change in terms of like what am I doing as a work person, as like my job. So that was kind of an alright transition. I think the difference really is that for now I am helping with math, but in undergrad I was helping in physics. So I'm more comfortable in helping in math, but that kind of translates very badly because then I sort of start moving fast because to me it's just like, oh, this is easier than explaining physics because to me physics is very like I gotta like mesh through it. So I get to be like more of a leveled person for physics students than I am for a calculus student. For calculus students, it's very hard for me to be like, um, let's slow down because there's like a lot of things that we need to talk about. But yeah, overall, though, I think TAing is a overall nice experience. I did get reaffirmed that teaching is one of the things that I want to do in life. So that's one of the best things that I got out of this experience this semester. That I still like teaching, no matter how crazy and chaotic all of this was. Oh God. The worst thing about being a TA though is the grading part. I don't like grading not because it's a lot of work. I tend to work on my grading assignments really fast. But the hard thing about it is just knowing what the students have done, knowing what they can do, and then the exams just not lining up to their understanding of the material. Like maybe a wording was off, maybe they couldn't really understand what the problem was. But like you know them because they're your students and you know what they're capable of, and then having to give them like a bad grade kind of just makes me feel kind of terrible as a TA because it's just like, oh, I should have taught you how to like do that or like see the wording when you're given that kind of problem. So to me, like that was like the hardest thing for me to learn as a TA. It's just like starting to detach myself, not fully, but like starting to detach myself from the 100% responsibility of a student's learning because I am just a teaching assistant. Assistant should be the key here. I'm not the teacher, I'm not the professor. I should be assisting the teaching process, not being the teacher themselves. So for me, it's just kind of like it's still kind of a hard thing for me to like learn and like detach from because for me it's just like I want to be a teacher. This is what I want to do in life, and for me to like cut myself short and be just an assistant is kind of still weird for me to like mangle through. And hopefully, like next semester, I'll do a better job at just being an assistant rather than being a sort of second teacher. And that's my biggest problem with it. I think I'm in the process of learning how to be a good teacher and also a good teaching assistant because I found out that those two are very different things. So I'm kind of very excited about academia because it's just like talking about it now, it's just like, yes, this is absolutely what I am passionate about at the current moment and I want to keep doing it. And that's why I'm in this program. Uh, and I believe that's all I wanted to say for the TA section of this video. All right, so I can't have a video about how this semester went without talking about the fact that we were on Zoom and like social distance and virtual and all that stuff. Now that was like a mess. I don't think there's any school out there that's done this kind of thing thoroughly unless they were already online even before the pandemic. But yeah, like I don't think any school transitioned very nicely. So you kind of just have to take what you can get and like try to look at the silver lining and try to look at the pros of what the Zoom University offers you. So with that in mind, I'm gonna start with the downsides of being on Zoom, and then I'm gonna end it off with the good things because I think we should start with the low points and then build up to the high points. So yeah, so one of the biggest downsides about being a student on Zoom is that it requires a lot more discipline from yourself. So to me, it's just like, oh, like my laptop's just right there. I don't have to get up until like 5 minutes before class to like prepare for it because I can just quickly log in to Zoom and like there I am in class. And then also like just being on the Zoom is not enough. Like you actually have to pay attention because sometimes I'll be like getting up, getting water, doing some stretches, like doing some random stuff, maybe making lunch sometimes. So I think that's one of the downsides. Just it just requires a lot more out of you as a student to actually pay attention. Because when you're in a normal classroom, when you're in the seat in the classroom in front of the professor, your mind sort of just clicks and it's just like it's time to focus on this. Another downside is that I don't think I understand as much as I would be if I was in a real classroom, and I know a lot of people like feel the same way. Sort of just like you miss that sort of like environment where you're just like this is dedicated to learning, because it's sort of hard to learn when you're in a space like your house where it's like loud or it's like you have video games like right next to you. It's kind of hard to separate that life from the school life that you have to pay attention to. So I think it just to me feels like I'm not understanding as much because I'm sort of not as attached to the material and like the lectures as I would be if I was in person. This was kind of silly. It's kind of expected, right? Because it's like you're dealing with technology. So, of course, there's going to be technical difficulties. The amount of times that we've had to say you're not recording, or your Apple Pen's like dying, or like your mic is off, or like stuff like that. It's sort of just like there's a lot of things going on at once. And it's not to say that there's not like things to worry about in the person class, because there is still material that you need to have prepared in the classroom itself to actually teach in person. But like I feel like in Zoom it's a lot more condensed, like things are happening in a more condensed area. So I think those are the cons that I've sort of laid out. I couldn't really think of much more than that. There's probably a ton more. But now let's get to the good stuff about being on Zoom University. So this is sort of like the double-edged sword of being in the environment of your house. It could be a distraction, but to me, I also see it as a good thing because I am at home. I am somewhere where I am relaxed and I am able to be at ease. And I think learning to me like comes a lot easier if I am more relaxed. If I am tense, I tend to like tune out a lot of the knowledge that I'm absorbing. So if I'm like relaxed, I feel like information will just like I can gain information a lot easier when I'm more relaxed, is what I'm trying to say here. And also like I don't ever have to worry about being late because there's that thing of like, oh okay, I can get to class in about 5 minutes. And so like I've never had to worry about being late to a class. And if I miss a class, there's a recording of it because it's on Zoom. Of course, it's gonna be a recording for it if your professor is nice enough. So it's sort of like there's this chance for you to catch up, even if you fall behind. Because there has been some times where it's just like there was a lecture in particular where I couldn't really understand what it was, so it took me like some time working on homework, reading the textbook, and then rewatching the lecture to be like, oh, okay, so that's what she was talking about. That's what they were talking about. And so to me, it's just like there's a chance for you to like learn more often. I think that's what I'll say. With that though, there's also like the pro of like if you want to hang out and like have a study session with a person, and like back then it's kind of hard to do a study session because like oh I gotta walk to campus or I gotta do this and that. But now you can just be like I'll open up a Zoom room and we can like Zoom together, draw on the whiteboard and like talk about the proofs that we've written. So that's kind of good to me. Like it's sort of a lot easier to have study sessions and like in the social sense too, like removing ourselves from the context of academia. I think having Zoom like just normalize is kind of nice because then um, on Friday nights when the math department has a sort of tea time and like a Zoom hangout night, I tend to go to it because it's so fun. It's just fun to like talk to people. I think Zoom, although it has been like kind of chaotic, I think it also has helped with the pandemic, like bringing people closer together even through the pandemic. Because I've met a lot of people through the Hangouts, through the Zoom social nights that I would not have probably like talked to ever in this program. Maybe not for the first 2 years at least, but yeah. I think like I've met like staff members, I met like professors that I probably would have been scared to talk to in person. I met older grad students that I probably would not have like felt the courage to talk to, but now I'm more sort of comfortable with talking to them because we've kind of had these conversations on Zoom. And I think that's one of the good things for me at least about Zoom is that it's allowed me to make connections that I probably would not have made this early on in my program. Hi, so this is future Johan editing the video, and I decided to actually make this update video be a two-parter because I think reaching more than 25 minutes on a video is kind of excessive. I don't want people to sit here for 25 minutes just listening to me talk. So I'll split it into two videos, and I think it's actually more organized this way because the first one that you just saw will be about being a grad student, while the next video is just a more general kind of video that even I think undergraduates will like to watch. So until then, see ya.